All right, let's call this meeting to order. First item on the agenda, roll call, Carla.
Nyla Fry.
Here.
Trisha Brown.
Here.
Sam Kaufman.
Here.
Kristen Runge.
Here.
Aaron Moran.
Here.
Joe Zisselsberger.
Here.
And Robert McPherson.
Here.
All right, next item, confirmation of open meeting compliance.
I can confirm that the drafted agenda was published in the Waunakee Tribune on 9/15. The final agenda was posted in all three official posting locations on 9/13 and 9/14. And the final agenda and packet were made available online on 9/13. Just two important requests for the audience members. Please be sure you sign in on the sign-in form with your name, address, municipality for accurate record keeping. And those interested in participating in public comment, please be sure you give me your form prior to that agenda item.
All right, next up on the agenda is public comment. Does anybody have a public comment?
We have a few. So Linda Ashmore at 114 South Street, Waunakee.
I'm here to talk about the decision to draft a policy to allow trustees to Zoom into meetings. During a January village board meeting this year, the village attorney gave an opinion that trustees participating remotely would not be advisable. The use of Zoom meetings was allowed during the pandemic, but the pandemic has officially been declared to be over. And he took the view at that time that the attorney general would not look favorably on elected officials participating remotely. Instead of asking the attorney to come up with a policy, it seems the prudent thing to do is to ask for clarification from the attorney general. If the AG says it's okay, then proceed with drafting a policy. It saves unneeded attorney fees if it's not even going to be allowed. And some of you weren't on the board at the time, but the reasons the previous board didn't want to allow Zoom participation for trustees were, if you agreed to serve on a committee or run for elective office, you are making the commitment to be here. In-person meetings allow for reading nonverbal communication. There's the ability for citizens to talk to members after meetings. There's difficulty with creating and enforcing Zoom rules. There's technology failures. There are legal issues like quorum, voting and out-of-state participation. There's already an absence policy and it allows officials to miss 1/3 of meetings, which I think is excessive, but I mean, you are allowed to be absent. There really isn't a need. Village board meetings and committees have had quorum rules and those rules have worked for years. In-person is better for communication. That's why everybody wants schools to go back into in-person as soon as possible. The reason for the request to Zoom in was related to a work conflict. As a constituent, one of the biggest expectations is that my elected officials show up in person at meetings. If you can't do that, I question your commitment to the job that you ran for and were elected to do. I appreciate that many of you took the time to respond to my email, but I am in disagreement on your decision to pursue the Zoom policy. At the federal, state, and local levels, meetings are in person, not Zoomed. I see this as a way to remove yourselves from facing your constituents when controversial items come up. When a big apartment complex was proposed on Main Street, there was a large number of citizens attending in opposition. A trustee Zooming in could avoid facing constituents, which is not optimum. If you're going to vote on something, you should be in the room. Also, I request a newcomer discussion be done in open session as much as possible. It's always been customary to do public hearings on TIDs at the village board level. And so this is not having a public hearing, and I disagree with that. I'm asking, I know you can't do it at this meeting because there's not been a public hearing notice, but I'm asking that policy be reinstated. You're the elected representatives, not the CDA, and you should be the ones hearing from the public for public hearings. And regarding tonight, the newcomer, I still don't think it's a good idea because you're still paying $2 million in incentives to get $10 million in valuation. Thank you.
Tom Foster, 32 Fairview Drive, Waunakee.
Good evening. My name's Tom Foster, and I'm here tonight to ask about commemorative flags again. I submitted a request to one of the board members to consider the pink ribbon flag to be flown in October from the village of Waunakee flagpoles. I noticed it's not on the agenda tonight, so I don't know if that's a yes or a no, but I hope you will consider that. I know there's an arbitrary, and I'd say arbitrary because you put 10 years of display from state capitol or federal capitol buildings as one of the criteria. Why not make it 15? Why not make it 20? It's just an arbitrary number that you chose, it seems to me. So I don't think there should be any kind of a limit on a flag being flown if it's in the interest of the community. In support of this, I would submit that in a couple communities that flags have been flown for the first time. Warwick, New Hampshire, they raised the pink ribbon flag at the city hall, and this raises awareness of breast cancer. Mayor Ken Hopkins of that community said this is the first time the city has flown the flag. We could join them. In Newcastle, Delaware, they flew the pink ribbon flag to observe Breast Cancer Awareness Month. The flags that fly outside the Newcastle County Government Center are being joined by a newcomer. Again, another community that does something for the first time. There's no reason that we can't follow their lead. The NFL supports breast cancer awareness. They have a big campaign that's going to go on in October. If the NFL can do it, why can't Waunakee do it? And then just locally in the state of Wisconsin, Bergstrom Automotive Group is going to have a big campaign during October to make people aware of breast cancer and to show support for those victims of breast cancer and those people who suffer with them. So I would ask that you would consider this for your next meeting. October will be your next meeting, but we could still have the flag flying at least part of the month. And I would ask that you would consider that proposal. Thank you.
Jerry Ashmore, 114 South Street, Waunakee.
Hi, I'm Jerry Ashmore. I'm here to speak about TIF funding. I found a 2019 MacIver Institute analysis of TIF funding online, and it is very interesting reading, which I recommend to all trustees. Just Google TIF analysis MacIver and you'll find it. Regarding development inside TIF districts, the report states, new development requires public services like police, fire, and ambulance. Streets need to be plowed. Street lights need electricity. If the tax levy isn't increased to pay for this, local governments have to stretch their existing budget to fit these new requirements. Whenever new development takes place in a TID, that community will experience either high taxes or reduced services. There is no getting around that. The report concludes, TIF too often results in higher property taxes in the name of economic development. That development is never guaranteed and is not always contingent on the use of TIF in the first place. Furthermore, many public works projects currently funded through TIF could just as easily be funded with non-TIF bonding. This all runs contrary to popular narratives concerning TIF. A month ago, a local developer stated at this meeting that the Waunakee School District does not lose out on property tax revenue due to TIFs since increased state aids make up the difference. Trustee McPherson said that according to school officials, although that is supposed to happen, it does not cover all the lost tax increment. Regardless of who's right, consider where the state finds the money to make schools whole. It's from our state income tax and sales tax. Since Waunakee is an affluent community, we likely pay well more than average in state income and sales taxes. We are taxed, again, to pay for the effects of TIF. So when board members say they want to ease my tax burden as a Waunakee homeowner, and they do it by creating TIF districts that raise my taxes for 20 years or more, I say that is wrong, plain and simple. Thank you.
Mary Heimbecker, 306 West 3rd Street, Waunakee.
The past 3 to 4 weekends, there have been power outages in the village on several different areas of it. One time it was because a squirrel got in and blew it out the next time a transformer blew. This past weekend, we had power outages again. Some were total power outages, some were just brownouts where some of the lights in your buildings were working, some were not, or they were just flashing. And I'm just curious if the board is in contact with utilities, if you're aware of these issues and what might be going on. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Dennis Helt, 214 K Drive, Waunakee.
I had a talk with Tim Semen, and would you mind? It was a cordial talk, and thank you. I disagree, but I asked why the staff recommended this TIF for Welch. And he said, well, it brings jobs and economic benefits to the community. And if you want to add anything else on that, go ahead. And I mean, right? Is that fine if he does that? I mean, I think that it's not good enough. I think you can pay, if you can pay for it on your own, great. I'm all for business. Good for them. Go and make these slides and make millions. That's fine. But why should we back it? Wait until you can do it. He also said, well, they are unusual in that they will pay back this TIF. And he said, even though it is in nominal dollars, and he agreed to that. And I guess, well, I agree with that. It's going to be less money. It's going to be, the value of that money is going to be far less by the time it's done. But he also said TIF is a tool that the communities use in development. And I think okay, but it gives the developers an unfair advantage. And maybe this should be a region-wide or statewide thing, that let's not have anybody give a TIF, because, oh, if I can't play with my ball, and I'm not saying it's them, if I can't use my ball here, I'll go to Verona or Middleton or somewhere else. And I don't like that. But in the end, we'll be paying this, they'll be paying this back until 2050 something. And I most likely, statistically, will be dead. So I will not see the full benefit of that, but I guess that was the final thing, but that was the least of it. But I don't like the fact that they're doing that.
I have no other comment cards.
Anyone online?
No online.
All right, public comment is then closed. Next item on the agenda, reports. Parks and Rec Committee. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm skipping ahead. Let's approve the consent agenda. Does anyone have anything they'd like to have pulled from the consent
I'll move
agenda?
approval of the consent agenda.
All right, any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Consent agenda is approved. Now let's do reports. Parks and Rec Committee.
The park committee met on the 6th of this month. The only item that we discussed was the proposed splash pad in Centennial Park. We had about a 2-hour meeting. We had a lot of neighbors here providing their input. There's continued work by the firm to discuss potentially swapping the location of the splash pad and the playground. And in terms of specific themes, there was a lot of interest from the neighbors in a natural agricultural sort of theme. So pretty much we're just waiting for the consulting firm to come back and see what they came up with based on the input from the neighbors, staff, et cetera.
Thank you very much. Create Waunakee Committee.
Yeah, yesterday was the Art on Main auction. Do you have any update for that before the rest of my?
Yeah, it went well. We raised over $3,000 with some funds going back to the village's Create Waunakee program and the other going to Endress Manufacturing Foundation. Good participation. It was another fun project.
Thank you, Todd. October 1st is the 3rd annual Waunakee Artisan Market. So this is one of the biggest events of the year. It's at Schumacher Park from 9 to 4. It's $2 cash. It's a lot of local artists and including students. There's scholarships for the student artists that are there. And we still need volunteers. So if you want to volunteer, that would be great. Snowplow painting, Create Waunakee and the school district and Public Works are teaming up to have some school district students paint one of the Public Works snowplows this next month to use for the winter. So it's a really cool engagement there. And then I'm also library. Should I
Yes,
just
you
go right in
are,
that?
yeah.
All right. So we met last Friday. The library I had numbers, but maybe I'll have Todd send that out this week. For you all, the summer reading program was a hit. They increased every single participant completion from last summer, which is amazing. Sunday hours return, so they're open Sunday afternoons again now. And yeah, another great month at the library.
Excellent. I see those signs all over town with the kids who've completed the reading program. That's really,
cool.
yeah, very cool that that happens. Other committees or other boards or commissions?
EMS met
Thank you.
last
Mhm.
week on Thursday. We'll have a package to our board probably the second meeting in October, which has the first round of reforms to the policy for the EMS district. We did not get into the more controversial items in the first meeting. We just went through each change as presented that we could all agree on without any discussion, which took still a good hour to get through that list. So there will be more changes in the future, but this first round takes care of a lot of the low hanging fruit. The district has managed to bring on some more part-timers. They changed how they were going about getting part-time employees, and it's been very successful. So they're continuing to go on that road. And then we are still continuing through the process of negotiation for the next contract with the EMS employees.
All right, thank you very much. Any other commission meetings?
Chris and I just have one follow-up to the data that Aaron mentioned for summer reading. They had, I think this is what you're looking for, 426 kids kids and teens go through the whole series through the summer. So
Oh, that's
Yep.
great. That's fantastic. Good job, kids. All right, next on to business items. Number 1, discuss and take action on the Kaltenberg annexation withdrawal. Tim, is that you?
That is me. Thanks, President Runge. This particular agenda item is associated with action previously taken by the board. Excuse me. As you remember, earlier this year, the board conditionally approved an annexation of the Kaltenberg lands on the east side of the village, subject to the applicant signing an annexation agreement. Staff recently learned that the Kaltenbergs have decided not to sign that annexation agreement at this time. And so that then calls into question what to do with that previous action. So staff included in the packet is an ordinance that would essentially rescind or deny the previously approved annexation ordinance. Now, if the village does take that action, that doesn't deny the Kaltenbergs a point in time in the future in which they could reapply or request to annex those lands. So there's no nullification of that. It just simply means they would have to go back through the process. So Brian may have some more commentary regarding that, but the ordinance is in the packet. Again, these materials are on pages 15 through 20. We did consult with DOA on this process, and this is a suggested pathway for this particular item. So staff is recommending approval of the ordinance rescinding previous action.
All right, any questions or comments? No? None?
no, I'll make the motion to approve the ordinance to deny previously approved annexation petition and ordinance.
I'll second it. Any further discussion on the motion? No? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, motion carries. Item number 2 on the agenda, let me go back up here, is let's see here, to discuss and take action on the 2024 health insurance plan, page 21 of your packets, if you're following along.
Jared's going to give a brief introduction on our process and then turn it over to Al.
Thank you.
Good evening. So tonight we once again have our annual health insurance renewal on the agenda. So last year, for a bit of context, we stayed with Quartz for our health insurance carrier, but we added a second plan design to give employees some options. Happy to say that during our open enrollment period last year, and when we walked through those 2 different plans, we actually have seen pretty even split between them. And so to me, that's encouraging that those options were carefully considered by a number of our employees. We got back our renewal quote from Quartz this summer, and we're looking at a 8.63% increase to the premium. which admittedly, while is not ideal, that is certainly better than we've gotten in the past and is better than we're seeing with other health insurance increases throughout the state. I think the state plan is looking at about a 15 or a 14.5% increase this year. So for context. So with that all in mind, Al from USI Benefits will be giving a presentation here, going over, high level what I've just kind of mentioned here, and then as well as our recommendation why we're recommending renewing with no changes to our plan design. So with that, I'll turn it over to Al.
If I can just add a couple quick things, we did engage every year when we look at insurance plans, we engage a staff team, representatives from every department to sit in and provide us with feedback, to listen to and work to understand what the market is doing. So we have a good perspective. The entirety of your staff team have a good perspective in looking at this. So we did that again this year. I think we had 2 or 3 meetings maybe. And that's been our common practice. I would also add, being that we have 3 newer board members who haven't gone through our insurance renewal process yet, I did ask Al to do just a little bit of a deeper dive to give you some greater context into this decision-making process.
If you don't mind my adding, the committee has been exceptional in terms of engagement, and I'd say the continuity of the committee members has been especially valuable too, because having gone through it a few times, they get it. They understand that health insurance is a trend that's really hard to have any sustainability. And there's been some tough conversations and decisions, but in the end, to Todd's point, the engagement level and understanding and proactiveness, right? There's an understanding of, okay, we have this many dollars in claims, this much we're paying in premium. Ooh, we got a tougher year. And last year was a tough year in terms of some of the changes in cost shifting we had to do. But in the end, I think we're in a pretty good spot. So from an agenda standpoint, going through some of the background, current state, some of the benchmarking, a big part of what the committee does is not only look at what's our situation, but what are our peers? What are our other area employers, public, private, et cetera, and what does best practice look like? And then we'll look at as Jared indicated, kind of the summary of the proposal, and then some of the future state, what we're looking at moving forward. And I'm not very good at this advancement, and I'm not sure what. Thank you. So we've been with Quartz since 2016. Prior to that, we were with the state plan. And when we were with ETF, the local part of the state plan, and I'd say we looked at it every year for multiple years prior to 2016. And similar committee members were already engaged in it and looking at the pros and the positives and negatives of both scenarios. And I can summarize by saying it was a very good thing over the course of that time since then that we made the transition we're in. We did know over the prior years, not only looking at all the national carriers, the ETF plan, but also, other options, including the local HMOs. And in the past, the committees and the staff as a whole, because we've done surveys with the committee, are very aligned with the UW system and very comfortable with that. So that's a big piece that from a culture standpoint to keep in mind. Competition, getting less aggressive. You already indicated, Jared, that the state, for example, had right around the 15% rate increases. And we've seen WEA, the teachers plan, go out of business. We've seen Humana go out of business. So health insurance is getting harder. And the enrollment within the village has certainly grown over the years. So that's also a dynamic that, is part of our growth as a community. Next slide. What the committee looks at year over year, we have our 2 plans that were offered right now. We moved to a high deductible plan. This is present year, then the upcoming year. And I know that's a lot of data, and without spending a whole lot of time with each line, the summary of the data.
Quick suggestion. Could you use a laser pointer for this?
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. Sorry. How do you use the laser pointer? There you go. So you have these 2 columns that are present day rates and the village portion of the premium contribution, the village portion of the health savings account. So we had transitioned to a plan design that's a higher deductible. We put money in a side account, health savings account. The concept is, as an employer, as a community, as a village, where we evolved to is we'd rather pay the staff members than the insurance company. And in the end, to the tune right now of, several, 225,000 in the one plan and 197,000 a year in the other plan, put into HSAs to offset the deductible. And so fast forward to, okay, the insurance is asking for 8.63% increase. Meanwhile, we're going to pay the same flat amount toward the HSA. So there's not an increase in that portion. There's an increase in the insurance part, but that's about 2/3 of what it was before. So if you blend the two together, instead of 8.63% of our overall budget going up, it's now 6.4%. So I know if ask questions if there's any questions to that, but conceptually, we're having staff members accumulate funds in their side accounts, and that's use it or keep it. And over the course of time, they become more and more benefited from that than they would had we had a traditional insurance plan. Next slide. Meanwhile, we also pay a lot of attention to what's the impact to the staff members premium wise. And they pay a portion, the 12%, they pay their portion of just the premium. They can also contribute in HSA if they want, but just the premium portion. And when we look at what their premium contributions are per month in the two plan designs, you see in the first column, $72 single, $181 family goes to 79 single, 197 family. And then on the second plan design, the higher deductible option goes from $70 to 76 on a single and 175 to 190. So, okay, that's a lot of data. Seems like a reasonable increase. In the committee, again, went back and forth in the compare and contrast. If you want to advance further, something not coming through. What we tried to do, and one more should complete the slide. Oh, yep. So what we're really, pardon me? Oh, you're good. The main takeaways from this is, why do we offer benefits? Attract and retain staff. It's a part of the equation. And when we look at it with the committee, we're looking at what's the cost of the benefits, what's the cost of the turnover. We look at what are the different types of benefits that are available, and we look at what are the different costs of turnover. And, by having the overall engagement of all the key stakeholders in the committee process, it's a valuable opportunity to just understand turnover, understand culture, understand budgeting. Next slide. So, okay, attract and retain. What are the key components? Well, the plan design is a key component. That took a fair amount of education to understand, okay, we have a 4,000 single, 8,000 deductible on one plan. Holy, whatever crap. Well, fast forward, started educating. Here's how you can use the health savings account. Here's how we can make that affordable to the village and to the staff. And as consumerism built in, we evolved together as a collective employer. Payroll contributions. We'll share how we compare and contrast on what that means to attract and retain. Each generation has a little bit different mindset toward what's the more important of the two. And we try to make sure it's attractive to all levels of experience and age. And then you add the two together and we compare and contrast what the value is. And then you have the team in HR and benefits that ultimately that's where, we earn our keep working together and making sure the staff members appreciate and understand what it is that we're offering from a village standpoint. Next slide. Here's even more data. The committee members really appreciate this. Why do they appreciate it? It's transparency. What does the city of Middleton do? What does the city of Sun Prairie do? What are the, and we've seen changes in different plan designs with the different communities, the different carriers, whether it's GHC, whether it's Dean, whether it's Quartz or the state plan. And I would summarize and look at the different contribution levels, different plan design levels. And I would say, when we compare and contrast, we have some of the highest deductibles, but we also offset it quite aggressively. And oh, by the way, the premium contributions were in a really good spot there too. So the committee gives their opinions, their perspectives, and we make sure we understand it. And I'd say it's a good thing. Next slide. In addition to the local, cities, municipalities, villages, we also look at the area school districts. And in the far right, you see, for example, Waunakee Community School District, what we've done with their staff members and what they've done with, whether it's the local clinic and they're with Dean. And we do certainly weigh that into comparing and contrasting as well as the other area districts. And it's interesting to see, when we look at Dean, when we look at others, what the pros and cons are, and they, again, certainly weigh that into their consideration.
I'd just add, it's really interesting to have the staff at that table, because when a district or another community make a change, these folks have friends and buddies in the very same industry across the border. Middleton made a pretty significant change 2 years ago, and we heard from almost every employee group what their peers were saying and feeling in another community. And this, that's really insightful to understand the impact of change for us as we review options.
One of the most challenging pieces is the fact that during the pandemic, access became a growing issue, access to primary care, access to providers in general. And that continues to be front and center in all of those discussions and considerations, to Todd's point, when we were considering change of a different provider system. That became loud and clear. So meanwhile, as far as comparisons, we're competing favorably to the norm. And when we look at where we are in both rates and plan designs, we're feeling pretty good, especially with our HSA contribution. And the annual part of our process of looking at all the options, not just what we have, looking at all the options and what all our peers are doing and what it is that might we want to tweak, might we want to do better, might we want to consider or start educating to make sure we're offering best in class. So timeline, here we are in September doing the review. Next steps. So all of the plan comparisons we looked at are calendar year. So the upcoming rates are for January through December of 24. And so staff members each year look at which of the two plans do we want to consider. And our open enrollment education that we do is starts in October. And throughout the process, they need to be done by October 20th, and January 1st, again, is the effective date. And meanwhile, the budgeting process, working with Renee and the rest of the team, we just make sure we understand what is and isn't within the budgetary range. Are we within reason of that range? And are we in a good spot moving forward? So, did I miss anything? All right. Any questions or thoughts?
Thank you very much for the presentation. Do we have any questions?
Question. What was was there any discussion around, I saw that some of the other municipalities, like they do the incentive for wellness or biometric screening, things like that. Is there a reason why we don't consider that?
Good question. It is certainly something being part of, it's been part of discussions. There's a couple of different approaches. I'd say by having the high deductible with HSA, part of the incentive is it's use it or keep it. And there's some of the promotions on wellness already have some incentives through our carrier, which is Quartz. If they have their certain, they get points if they do it. Now it's not listed here, but it's incorporated into the carrier. But I certainly like your question, because it's certainly something we can continue to bring up and say, why not revisit that? Because the biggest piece I would say is we would want, for example, Waunakee Community School District, they have their own clinic. And when you have your own clinic and you create that incentive, there aren't really any surprises, because A, access is available, and B, when you go and get your primary care visit, if you talk about your elbow, there's not an additional surcharge that all of a sudden comes up for something they thought was 100%. And until we have that, right now, we're not in a great place, not just, none of the carrier systems are in a great place for access to primary care. And until we can solve that, we've gotten so much more negative than positive of creating that incentive by saying, oh, great, I got the incentive, but it cost me $250 more to go in because you talked about my elbow and they charged me more. So that's part of the challenge. It's not, unfortunately, as clean as we would hope. Thank you. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? All right. Seeing none, I'll make a motion to renew the village's health insurance benefit through MSI for the, through courts for the plan year 2024 with no changes to the plan options nor the village's HSA contributions.
Second.
All right, any discussion on the motion? No, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, next item on the list, discuss and take action on proposed development agreement between the village and Welch Enterprises LLC in tax increment district number 9, page 35 of your packet if you're following along. And Tim, take it away.
Thanks, President Runge. Yes, this item was discussed at the last village board meeting. Included in the packet are 2 iterations of the next iteration of the development agreement. The first one comes from the Welch's attorney that compares the initial draft with the proposed changes. And then the second copy that's in your packet is a red line version from our village attorney that clarifies some of the language in there. It does not propose any substantive changes, but just clarifies some of the provisions. The 3 main ones in there that are changes from the initial draft include limiting the pay-go payments to 10 years, a provision for penalty in the event the newcomer is delinquent in their repayment, and then a $10,000 annual fee added on to the payments by newcomer in repayment years 6 through 20, which would actually be years 16 through 30, if you follow up the whole deal, as an incentive for newcomer to repay the loan faster. Approval of the DA would be contingent upon approval of the amendment to the project plan and boundary for TID 9. As I mentioned, our attorney is here and may discuss some additional provisions of that plan with us. Sam and Mike Welch in the audience remotely. Kate Crowley is with us, and I believe Todd Taves, our financial consultant, has joined us as well. So the next iteration is before you, and I would turn that over back to you. Staff is recommending approval, by the way.
All right, thank you very much. Any other presentations? Mike or Sam, did you want to say anything? No, all right.
No, just in case any further questions for Tom.
Okay, for sure. Excellent. And did Todd want to say anything online? Okay, okay,
Sorry.
all right.
Just a second. And no, Todd wasn't as involved in the negotiation of the development agreement as much as he was in the design of the TIF amendment proposal.
Okay, and Brian, did you have anything you'd want to add?
No, I mean, it is noticed for the potential to go into closed session. I mean, I think that we're prepared to discuss whatever you would like in open session, but if at any point in time the board wants to move in closed to discuss terms, that would be up to you.
All right,
But I think we're prepared at a staff level to have the entire discussion in open if that's what the board would prefer.
okay. Board, what do you think? Open session or closed session? Which would you prefer? Do you have any preferences?
Open as much as
Open?
possible.
No? Open? All right, I believe we're all in agreement. So then let's discuss. Who would like to make a comment? Would anyone like to make a comment?
I guess just a question for staff and going back and bringing us to this point. I think understanding and appreciating the feedback and the discussion that the board had at the last meeting and trying to work into something that is favorable. I guess I feel like you've taken what our feedback and brought really what we requested to see. So if everybody feels good about that, I think that's helpful. Appreciate that effort on both sides.
Other comments or questions? None?
So, and this might be, I'm not sure who this is for, maybe it's for Todd Taves, but with the proposed structure on here, we're looking at a maximum of 14 years at $10,000 a year. So we're saying 140,000 plus 2 million. But do we have any idea what that number would be fully like adjusted for inflation at the end of the life?
Todd's in the car. I'm guessing he doesn't have his calculator.
Yeah, I stay off the top of my head. No, I wouldn't be able to provide that number.
Okay.
I will say that I actually did a very rough shot at that and came up somewhere between about a third and half. So, yeah.
Okay. Just to make it clear for purposes, since we're in open session, is there any sort of improvements being made to any properties around besides the actual building of Newcomer Supplies building? Are we doing any sort of like infrastructure improvements or anything in the area under this?
No, this is just, it would just impact their building, their project, no public infrastructure.
Okay.
Other questions or comments? All right, last call for other questions or comments.
I do have a question from the people at Newcomer. At the previous meeting, you stated that the science, the process hasn't changed in 80 years. So my question is, are you flexible and nimble enough that there's some technology that changes things that you would be ready to implement whatever you needed to do to go with the change? Because I know technology changes fast sometimes.
Sure.
And it sounds like yours hasn't for a while. So I'm like, okay, what happens if suddenly there's a new way of doing this and you have to implement something for that?
So histology is just a very old science, right? It's a study of tissue. And in making the statement that it's an 80-year-old science, it's an older science even than that, if you really want to take it back farther. One of the benefits of us existing in such a traditional science methodology is that we work in a very human-powered, required process in the laboratory. Microtomy is a very challenging task for anybody to do, and it's the kind of task that takes 3 months before somebody's actively producing something that might be available to a customer, and 6 months before they're anywhere near on time in what they're able to do for quality and time. So we're very much interested in making our work environment better. And we're very much interested in making what we're able to do to any of our customer laboratories better. But we actually, to some degree, enjoy the fact that the world can pass us by a little bit while we continue to do the thing that you have to do in this particular way. What can happen in innovation is things somewhat adjacent to that human core responsibility of microtomy and understanding the staining procedures. So you can get into certain levels of equipment to automate some of the staining, both in the immunohistochemistry and in the traditional histology circumstances. And then there might be, as we continue to grow, advancements in those tools, but the core of it will continue to be, in comparison to other laboratory sciences, a far more of a high percentage human endeavor. So we look to innovation if it helps us do what we do well, and especially if that tool would make the human interaction to the work better within our team environment. But we're much more dedicated just trying to do that job well than we are in trying to constantly outpace it in innovation. We would like to press the issue in regards to how well we're able to train and how we're able to interact with our customers. But that core science, we don't get the exciting press that other types of laboratory science does.
Thank you.
Mike's smarter with this stuff. I shouldn't have gotten up. He talks about the science. I tend to talk about the things. So
Yeah, that's kind of funny. That was my answer. So I'll do your answer.
okay, that's good.
One of the interesting things about this project, and one of the reasons we're here before you, is because of the building that Sam and our team has designed is purposely intended to be bigger than what we need tomorrow. The land provides us the opportunity, and the infrastructure, that the mechanical infrastructure and design that's going into this building from day one is going to allow us to expand if a pivot is needed in the science of histology. Highly unlikely histology is ever going to be truly automated due to microtomy. It is a human scale. They've been trying to automate it for decades and they've failed and failed. But as a business, the building from the day one will be adaptable to taking on additional laboratory sciences if needed in order to be a viable business in the village of Waunakee.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments? Joe?
Yeah, I think this was several meetings back, and I want to say it was probably Kate from Baker Tilly that had brought it up. I think part of the financing package that you're looking at included some sort of a tax credit as well. Is that anything that you can speak to, particularly in open session?
Kate's coming off mute here.
Okay.
I'm here. Can you see me?
Yep.
Oh, perfect. I apologize for not being there. I'm sick and keeping my germs away from Village Hall. But glad to have a chance to join this way. Yes, we've been working with the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation and have an offer that is not yet, it's a letter of intent. We don't quite have an offer yet, but a letter of intent for $250,000 of business development tax credits, which is a refundable tax credit, state tax credit that would be awarded over 5 years. And that's part of the underwriting from the bank. The application has been submitted and we should have an award letter in the next few weeks.
Okay, so I guess to clarify, the letter that we had seen from one community basically said that the TIF portion of this was required. Are you saying that that tax credit is also a requirement in order for that lending?
That tax credit is not a requirement for the lending. It's a requirement, I believe, I'll let Mike and Sam confirm, for Mike and Sam's comfort to proceed with the project. But the bank required the TIF because the size of it and the impact of the project is so much more significant than the tax credits.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions?
Excuse me. How many jobs, I know we discussed this, it's been so long, I'm sorry, and it's not the packet. How many jobs are we getting when you open, and then how many, what's the projection for, new jobs that you'd be bringing in?
So right now we're 30 full-time and 10 part-time. Probably if we're gaining in occupancy, we'll be a couple more in both categories by then, so probably by occupancy, we might be at 33 or 34 full-time and maybe 12 part-time. We're not sure as we move into the new building, there's a likelihood that our percentage of full-time to part-time will be greater, right? Because we won't be trying to accomplish unique schedules with the small amount of space we have. So that percentage, which is now like 75% full-time to 25% part-time, might decrease. But if we want to call that like 36 full-time equivalency at the point of moving in, then within probably by 2030, there would be the hope that we would be in the 50 full-time equivalency category. And then within the scale of this building, the way that we've measured it is to say that this is a 70 to 80 full-time equivalency building as currently designed. If we continue to be successful, and this is 10, 12, 15 years from now, and especially like Mike was talking about, advanced versions of histology services, which would require another lab. So both perform a occupancy requirement. We filled up the building as currently designed, or we have to move into a brand new type of design of lab in adjacency to the lab we've already built. Then we think that this building could support maybe close to 100 full-time equivalency. So all on that 3 1/3 acre lot. The expansion would be a 12 to 14,000 square foot, 2-story. So about anywhere from a 6,000 to 7,000 square foot bird's eye view. So hopefully sometime within a handful of years of occupancy, we would be getting over 50. And then if this fully stretched out over 15 years plus, there's a chance that we could be at 100. I think once you start getting north of 100, that's the part where that lot wouldn't support it. But of course, we have to kind of gauge how much is, right now we run a second shift in our small facility to handle how small things are. So if we're still running a second shift on this lot, then the effectiveness of this building is greater. And then we have to see like what effect remote work has. We're, again, not only just because of the science or other circumstances, we have a full warehouse, and even our office work tends to be, everybody works in the office. We tend to do work that requires us to be there. So we have a very low percentage of remote work right now, but that's something that could change too. So the building maybe could support more than 100, but right now that would be our highest projection.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right. Tricia?
No, we've been meeting, I think we've all mentioned, for a couple of months now, working back and forth. And I appreciate the patience of the applicant and the due diligence of the village staff that's gotten us to this point. I know this is unique. There's been a lot of discussion back and forth on, this isn't necessarily public improvements, but I think this is an improvement to the community in addition to the business park. And I think that because both parties have really shown like a co-investment of effort in this, that I believe your company is going to be incredibly successful and will be a great addition to that. So I would recommend approval and move to approve the TID development agreement between the village and Welch, conditioned upon joint review board approval of the amendment to TID 9 project plan and subject to final review and approval by the village community development director and village attorney.
I'll second. Any discussion on the motion?
I would like a roll call vote, please.
All right, roll call vote then.
Nyla Fry,
No.
Tricia Braun,
Yes.
Sam Kaufman.
No.
Kristen Rungy,
Yes.
Erin Moran,
Yes.
Joe Zisselsberger,
Yes.
Robert McPherson.
No.
Motion passes. Thank you very much, everyone. And Mike and Sam, thank you very much. On to the next item, consideration and possible action on a resolution approving an amendment to the project plan and boundaries of tax incremental district number 9. Tim?
Thank you, President Rungy. This is I'll say the third out of the fourth step in the creation or amendment process of a TID. And in this case, we're looking at the project plan and boundary for amending TID 9. That is included, the information is included in your packet, pages 81 through 114. With us, Todd Taves is probably going to run through a few slides. I'll have those queued up, excuse me, in a moment, and then just pitch it over to Todd. Whenever you're ready, I will have those slides on the screen. All set when you are, Todd.
I'm ready, Tim.
And Todd, what speed are you traveling?
Sure, and I can't see the slide. I'm traveling at 0, Todd. I see the slides now. So I'll be brief because we've obviously spent a lot of time talking about this project, and the amendment is solely passed. This cover, Tim, as well as the first slide on how tax incremental financing works, and go to proposed amended district boundary. So this is a simple one parcel amendment. Existing TID number 9 is shown, 2 parcels hosting the occupied facilities, and then the parcel to be added that we've been discussing shaded in red. Also, just for reference, TID 9 as well as this additional parcel do overlap TID number 3, which is nearing the end of its maximum life. We've talked about the project already. This is an existing 20-year district, of which 5 years have elapsed. The test for whether or not an amendment can be approved is that not less than 50% of the property within the district is zoned and suitable for industrial development. And in this case, with the exception of the right-of-way areas within the boundaries, in fact, all of the district is suitable for industrial development. The next slide is just a zoom in, again, showing the boundaries more particularly in relationship to the Octopi facilities. I'm going to jump to the proposed project costs, Tim. And what we identify in this table, this district has been amended once previously. The original project plan, as was amended that first time, provides for just over $3 million in project costs. This amendment raises that estimated projected total to $5.3 million. The increases are in the area of the development incentive primarily, a small increase in the administrative expense, but then we've also included intersection improvements, or at least an opportunity to allocate some dollars to the extent that the intersection improvements on State Highway 19 and Hogan are determined to, or I should say the properties within this district are determined to benefit from those improvements. There is that allocation. We spent time on the previous item talking about the terms under which predates the most recent version of the development agreement that the board has approved. In terms of the projected valuation that is yet to occur within the district, the project plan includes the completion of the Octopi brewery expansion as well as the warehouse. Those projects were completed in 2022 and will come online from a value perspective as of the first of this year. The newcomer facility, expected to be constructed in 2024, is estimated to value at $10 million. When we look at it from a cash flow standpoint, again, this is entirely a pay-as-you-go tax increment district. So our obligations are the existing pay-as-you-go payments to Octopi for the brewery and warehouse, and now the new payments to newcomer in a maximum of $2 million. Again, we have that placeholder for the potential intersection improvement and the administrative costs. When we roll all that up, this indicates that sufficient tax increments will likely be collected by the year 2033, such that the TID and the village could pay off the balance of those liabilities and the district could close at that point. I think the last slide is the schedule, Tim. We are here obviously this evening in front of the village board. Should you elect to approve this amendment, this will go to the joint review board this Thursday, which will have the final determination as to whether or not to permit the amendment to proceed.
All right, thanks, Todd. I would like to, if it's okay, add one thing. So what you're seeing on the screen right now is that CDA date of August 9th. I would like to report at the public hearing that the CDA held, there was one person who spoke, and I just, if you don't mind, I'm going to just quickly share their comment. One resident spoke at the public hearing before the CDA with the concern that developers getting $2 million incentive for a $10 million project, and the tax increment is not going to the taxing jurisdictions, plural. She would like to see the development agreement figured out before taking it to the next level, and further stating that nobody gives residents money to build their homes, and she doesn't think this is the right use of taxpayer money. I would like to also correct something. Robert, you had asked a question about the dollars, where they're going. I was remiss in my answer in that some of the dollars could go to that Hogan Road improvement, subject to a review of proportionality. So some of the increment could go to that Hogan 19 intersection improvement.
Can I ask you a quick question since you brought that up?
Yeah.
Is that separate from, there was discussion of, the reason we're having this conversation now is because we wanted to newcomer wanted to fast track this because TID 10 was supposed to be created to support their project. How does this play into that?
Good question. And I will say, stay tuned to next month.
Okay.
So the wheels related to TID 10 are moving forward, and there will be many of these similar meetings that will take place next month related to TID 10, at which point we will also examine the intersection improvements. It's likely that Todd and I will be before the board on October 2nd to delve more deeply into detail about that.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much, Tim. Thank you very much, Todd. All right. What questions do we have? Any discussion? Go ahead, Joe.
Todd had mentioned potential closure, I think in 2033. I assume that would be pushed out If for no other reason, then I think first year of the newcomer stuff would be 2024, which would potentially move us one more year, if I remember correctly.
Todd Taves, did you get the question? Oh, there you go.
Yeah, so when we ran this initially, it actually doesn't change the projected closure year. Now, one thing I would say is since we've started this process, we've got new valuations out as of 1/1/23. And I don't have that with me immediately available, but it ended up that the Octopi facility, particularly the brewery expansion, did come in a bit lower in value than the original forecast. But independent of that, and just looking at a side-by-side comparison with consistent assumptions, all other things being equal, this project does not change the closeout year.
Okay, thank you.
All right, other questions or comments?
I'd like to have a discussion in October about the process with the TID creation going to CDA, because it doesn't seem very appropriate that they're getting the bulk of the technical of this, but we're the ones that have to vote on this. And I would very much like to hear from a public hearing perspective, what people have to think. I mean, thank you, Tim, for bringing the public comment from the meeting, but I mean, that seems to defeat the spirit of us doing the approval if they're handling the tech work and we don't get to hear. I know we can attend the meeting, but I feel like we should be the ones that get to ask questions during the technical side. I thought that they were supposed to be advisory and that they're just saying, yeah, this seems to make sense, as opposed to like really sussing out the technical issues.
We can certainly have that discussion. It was Plan Commission before CDA, and Brian, you have a comment.
Just two
Yeah.
comments. One, looking at the development agreement that was just approved, it acknowledges that in all likelihood, the first payment will be made in November of 2026. If it does require 6 years, or I'm sorry, if it does require 10 years of payments to get to the $2 million, that puts you at a final payment of November of 2035. I just wanted to point that out. By statute, the statutory public hearing for TIF has to occur at the Planning Commission or the CDA. Now, if you want to have a public hearing before the village board, you have that discretion, but the statutory hearing by statute, public hearing by statute has to be at the Planning Commission, in our case, the CDA. So no matter what you decide, they have to have a public hearing.
I'm not trying to deny that.
Oh, no, I'm
I'm
just, yeah.
Yeah, it's just, it hurts us because not all of us can attend those meetings.
No, and I understand that. There was a public comment suggesting that we switch the public hearing from the CDA to the village board, and we don't have the authority to do that. All we would have the authority to do is effectively have multiple public hearings.
And although it is not a public hearing, we do allow public comment at every meeting. And as long as something is on the agenda, it can be commented on. So, I mean, we do hear comments pretty routinely about TIF and TID that are being brought forward. So there is a method for getting feedback. It's just not the public hearing. We can certainly talk about that in October.
In other words,
Brian?
you definitely have the ability to request as a village board that the same presentation that is made at the Planning Commission or CDA for the statutory public hearing also be made to the village board too.
Okay.
I mean, you obviously, that's correct. You have the ability to request, require as much information as you want regarding the creation or amendments to TIFs.
All right. Tricia, did you have? No? All right. Tim? Yeah.
Just a point of clarification too, and in this case, although slightly abbreviated, what you saw this evening is the presentation that was given to the CD, and that's for the benefit of the other village board members.
All right. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? All right. Seeing none, I'll make the motion to adopt the resolution amending the project plan and boundaries of tax incremental district number 9 and authorizing the village clerk and assessor to fulfill their duties pursuant to state statute 66.11055.
I'll second.
Any discussion on the motion?
I suspect it's a required roll call vote, but again,
I just want to state, before we vote, I'm pretty sure where this is going, but we really need to be cognizant of impact on infrastructure, impact on services as we keep approving these, because I stated when this came to us initially, and I still feel strongly this way, we are opening up an interesting can of worms by offering a straight $2 million loan to somebody, because we still aren't making this decision based off of having all the information about all the finance going into this deal. I hope they're successful. They need to be successful in order for this to work, but if we're going to start becoming the Bank of Waunakee, we really should be more participating in, the risk side of these things to understand the financial stability of these businesses and maybe ask stronger questions.
Any other comments? All right, seeing none, let's go to vote.
Nyla Fry,
No.
Trisha Brown,
Yes.
Sam Kaufman.
No.
Kristen Rungy,
Yes.
Aaron Moran,
Yes.
Joe Zisselsberger,
Yes.
Robert McPherson.
No.
All right, motion carries. All right, we have one thing left on the agenda.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in-
Before your motion, if you do want, I'll stick around for a little bit and head downstairs if any board members want to see the revised or lower level version of, or the public for that matter as well. So you can see where we're interacting with the public. You're welcome to come down and take a peek.
All right.
But behind the plastic, it's a mess.
All
The
right.
big open.
All right. Any further discussion on the motion to adjourn? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right. We will see you guys next time.